Intense protests continue in Minnesota, United States of America, sparked by controversy over aggressive United States immigration and customs enforcement actions. The situation has escalated into a federal-state standoff, with President Trump considering invoking the Insurrection Act. Today, let's take a closer look at this issue. Let's get right into it. A Wall Street Journal report on January 18 said the United States Army has told 1,500 soldiers from Alaska's 11th Airborne Division to prepare for possible deployment to Minnesota. The Army said the move isn't finalized and is just a precaution in case the president gives the order. On January 15, President Trump warned that if corrupt Minnesota politicians don't stop agitators and insurgents from attacking immigration and customs enforcement agents performing their duties, he would invoke the Insurrection Act. This Insurrection Act gives the president the authority to deploy the military, including the National Guard, within the country in emergency situations such as riots, insurrections, or obstruction of law enforcement. It was last invoked during the 1992 LA riots and last used without the governor's consent 60 years ago. Of course, President Trump said on the 16th that he would use the Insurrection Act if necessary, but for now he showed a delaying attitude, saying there is no reason to invoke it at this time. There are also discussions about deploying FBI agents to the scene. The FBI has issued an emergency notice nationwide, recruiting personnel to send to Minneapolis, according to Bloomberg News. Some see this as more than basic government support. It's aimed at real on-site response. FBI agents usually handle counterterrorism, organized crime, and major federal crimes. It could be quite unusual to see them supporting street patrols during protests or assisting with immigration enforcement, especially if the perception spreads that federal investigative agencies are taking the lead in maintaining public order and responding to protests. It is highly likely that tensions in the local community will rise even further. This move is seen as a sign the federal government views the situation seriously, not just as a local incident. Currently, Minnesota is showing a very agitated atmosphere as the federal government continues to put pressure on the state. Let me tell you how serious it is. Jacob Perret, Minneapolis' mayor, spoke on cable news network and other outlets, objecting and saying he never expected a federal government invasion. He also stated, as I explained earlier, that the deployment of airborne troops was clearly a bait to provoke the protesters and incite violence. Tim Wold, the Minnesota governor, responded to federal airborne troop deployment by mobilizing the state National Guard and deploying them at key sites. This is being interpreted as an attempt to show that the state government has sufficient ability and resources to control the situation. The state government said on X that the National Guard is on standby but not yet deployed, ready to ensure safety and peaceful assembly. This incident started on January 7th when immigration and customs enforcement agents shot and killed Renee Gushi. The protests then spread across Minnesota, leading to more frequent clashes with immigration and customs enforcement agents. Images of immigration and customs enforcement agents using tear gas, pepper spray, stopping vehicles, and making arrests spread on social media, causing the protests to grow. Of course, Judge Kate Menendez of the Minnesota Federal District Court issued an emergency order stating that retaliatory arrests should not be made solely for participating in peaceful protests, and that the use of tear gas and pepper spray against peaceful protesters is prohibited. Clashes between protesters and agents still happen there. The Trump administration has begun investigating Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota and Mayor Frey of Minneapolis, launching the investigation on the grounds that the two interfered with federal law enforcement. Let's take a proper look at the beginning of this incident. It started with a shooting that occurred on January 7, 2026 in Minneapolis, Minnesota, United States of America. Renee Good, seated in a car parked at an angle in a residential area, and her spouse Becca Good, standing nearby, argued with Agent Jonathan Ross, who was filming. The exact cause is unclear, but cable news networks' closed-circuit television footage shows Renee Good dropping off Becca Good on the road shoulder minutes before the incident, then turning around and stopping in the road. In another Department of Homeland Security video, Good's vehicle blocks the road, honks, and a standoff with immigration and customs enforcement agents follows. The Trump administration and immigration and customs enforcement say Renee Good chased and blocked an immigration and customs enforcement vehicle, while her family argues she was monitoring immigration and customs enforcement activities and informing the community. So, as a result, it seems that this incident was not a case of immigration and customs enforcement agents stopping Good's group for inspection, but rather a clash that occurred when Good's side blocked the movement of the immigration and customs enforcement agents. At this time, an immigration and customs enforcement agent approached the vehicle and demanded that Renee Good get out, and one of them tried to open the door by grabbing the handle and reaching his arm through the window. But then Becca Good yelled at Renee Good to drive off. Surrounded by agents, Renee Good turned left, briefly reversed, then moved forward and turned right, trying to escape. Jonathan Ross, filming from the front, drew his handgun and fired 3 shots as Good's car turned right. This killed Renee Good. There is much debate over whether the shooting was justified, with political divides clear. Progressives in particular view the incident as an overreaction. The official policy document from the United States Department of Justice, which legally outlines recommendations for firearm use and situations involving vehicles, states that officers should not fire their weapons solely to stop a moving vehicle. Instead, non-lethal responses, such as moving out of the vehicle's path, should be prioritized. The manual specifies that the use of physical force should only be a last resort, such as when an officer is struck by a vehicle or when a vehicle is charging at an officer. Critics have pointed out that this incident was an overreaction. Conservative individuals argue this was a justified shooting. They argue that the vehicle appeared to be a threatening object and that the agent's actions were a lawful act of defense to protect his own life and the lives of his colleagues. They justify the defense by citing precedents in the United States that allow the use of deadly force when a vehicle poses an immediate threat. In fact, in the United States, police officers can open fire even if they are not actually hit by a car. If a vehicle rushes toward them or even just grazes them, it can be considered a deadly threat to the officer. For now, the United States Department of Justice has decided not to investigate the IC Committee for Abuse of Power regarding the shooting. Deputy Attorney General Ford Blanche also stated that there is no basis to investigate the legality of the shooting at this time. The United States Department of Justice has launched an investigation into the deceased spouse's background and civic organization ties. In fact, the population of Minnesota is about 5.79 million, and among them about 120,000 or 2.2% are undocumented immigrants. This is a lower percentage compared to states like Texas or Florida, where the number of undocumented immigrants exceeds 5%. However, there are various analyses as to why President Trump is targeting Minnesota. One major reason is that Minnesota is a stronghold for the Democratic Party, and it is also a region with very progressive tendencies. If Minnesota is controlled by stricter immigration enforcement, analysis suggests this could help gain an advantage in other states too. Cable News Network said Minneapolis, Minnesota has become a test case for undermining progressive values in cities that oppose Trump's leadership. The Associated Press noted that conflicts in Minnesota strongly attract Trump Make America Great Again supporters on social media. Looking at the current trends, it doesn't seem likely that this situation will escalate into large-scale nationwide protests shaking the entire United States. But at the same time, it's also hard to say that things will calm down quickly. That's because this clash centered around Minnesota is not just staying as a local incident, but is becoming an opportunity to bring to the surface the deep-seated conflicts that have already been building up within American society. Immigration enforcement, public authority, and federal intervention spark strong emotions among both progressives and conservatives. Going forward, American society is likely to experience even greater clashes in public opinion and the political arena than the protests on the streets. One side will stress order and law enforcement by immigration and customs enforcement and the federal government, while the other will view state power as increasingly threatening to citizens. In this process, each incident is likely to be incorporated into a political framework, with partisan logic taking precedence over the facts. The conflict between the federal and state governments is also a structure that will not be easily resolved. If more federal forces are deployed or investigations expanded, the state government will likely strongly oppose, possibly sparking a heated dispute over achievements. On the other hand, if the federal government steps back, conservatives who have supported a hardline response may criticize it as a political retreat. In either direction, the divide caused by the conflict is likely to deepen. This situation will likely further highlight divisions in United States public opinion. Immigration is already one of the most contentious issues in American society, and now, with the addition of a shooting death and the possibility of military deployment, emotions have risen even higher. As we move closer to the upcoming midterm elections, this incident is likely to be consumed as an issue of identity rather than just a policy debate, and it seems increasingly likely that the opposing camps will choose confrontation over compromise. Ultimately, the Minnesota incident will likely further highlight America's deep divisions. Although the protests may be confined to certain areas, their impact will likely spread across public opinion and politics, increasing tension and distrust in the United States. In the end, this conflict is unlikely to be resolved in the short term, and will probably serve as an opportunity to bring to light the structural divisions within American society. What do you think about the current situation? Please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. That concludes this video. Thank you.